I've heard many people remark or complain in forums that the Haswell line of Intel processors wasn't much better than the Ivy Bridge. I also remember many back in the day saying it really wasn't worth the upgrade. Well, as you can see, I have an i7 3770 Ivy Bridge CPU, as well as an i7 4770 Haswell. Now, when you compare the basic specs, they look nearly identical to each other. The Haswell CPU has a lower power consumption, but a higher TDP. My understanding for this is that the VRM was actually moved onto the die itself. The integrated graphics of the Haswell CPU is also better, however, only slightly. I may do a follow-up video later comparing the two, but for this video, I'll just be using an NVIDIA GTX 1650. First up, as usual, Passmark. The Haswell scored nearly 1,000 points higher in its final score, but the individual tests were mostly fairly similar, aside from a huge improvement in the SSE tests. Memory tests, well, they scored nearly the same. In 7-zip, the 4770 finished first, but only by a few seconds. In Cinebench, it also finished first, but again only by a few minutes in the solo test. With the multi-core test, it again finished first, but only by a little over 30 seconds. Handbrake also appeared close. However, the Haswell rendered about 8 FPS faster. Now with the 10-minute clip, this didn't show much of a time difference. However, with a larger clip, a few FPS goes a long way, so there would have been much more of a gap. Now, like I said before, you won't profit much or at all mining with these old CPUs. However, it's a good test to see what they can actually do. And, well, the Haswell performed better, but again, only by a small bit, only about 250 hashes per second. Now we get into how it works with games. With Heaven, it benched a bit higher than the Ivy Bridge. 26 FPS is a pretty huge jump in performance, and that's enough that it definitely would be noticeable when you're playing a game. Superposition was a similar story, but it scored a much closer average FPS. The Haswell was only about 10 FPS faster. In Unreal Tournament 3, the Haswell performed about 50 FPS higher on average. The BeamNG benchmark scenario, well, that's been broken since the most recent update. But just to get an idea, I drove down the same street in the same vehicle, and you'll notice a nearly constant 10 FPS gap. With GTA 4, as usual, here are the settings I used. There was again a constant 10 to 15 FPS gap, with the Haswell leading throughout. Besides just frame rates, the game and its menus felt far smoother as well. In GTA 5, again, it was the same old story, a 10 to 15 FPS lead. The in-game benchmark showed the Ivy Bridge i7 scoring 88 FPS on average, while the Haswell i7 scored nearly 104, and that feels about right.
What's happening?
Need for Speed Most Wanted is a much older game. Yes, there was the same old 10 to 15 FPS difference. For whatever reason on the 3770, all threads are lit up, while on the 4770, it's only really using 2 out of the 8 threads. When I put this video together, I thought maybe I screwed something up, so I went back to test, and the same thing happened. Remember, this is using the same install, which is on the same hard drive moved between boards. I also use the same physical RAM, so maybe someone out there knows what could be happening here? Crysis? Well, that benched about 20 FPS higher than on the Ivy Bridge.
Didn't even try. Oh, it's all becoming clear to me now. Find some juke to break you out of cryo sleep. Give him some sob story about escaping to the surface.
And good old Portal. Well, yeah. I'll let you take a guess. About a 10 FPS difference.
He has a little accident, doesn't he? Falls off his management rail, doesn't he? You're just scared, aren't you?
Ycruncher was run on both as usual, and the Haswell actually completed the test in half the amount of time as the Ivy Bridge. So as you can see, the 4770 wasn't remarkably faster than the 3770, but it definitely performed better and is more efficient. Looking at the games graphs, it reminds me a lot of when we went from Sandy Bridge to Ivy Bridge. Not a huge performance upgrade, but it was enough for many that to warrant, spending the extra money. And this looks about the same. However, Haswell used a different socket, so people had to actually go out and upgrade their motherboards as well. But with that new motherboard, you had the opportunity to get in with the new Gen 3 PCIe. So there's that. I do want to check out the integrated graphics performance between these two, so I'll probably do a quick follow-up video at some point, just using, like I said, the onboard graphics. As always, if you're still here, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you later.